Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Abigail Barbanel, and I've been a psychotherapist for almost 26 years. Welcome to this sixth episode of my series, Taking the Mystery Out of Therapy. In this particular episode, I'd like to focus on a couple of questions and comments that came from viewers who have been watching the podcasts. Usually, when somebody has a comment or a question, it means that other people have them too. So I thought it was worthwhile addressing them in this podcast. I call this particular podcast questions, answers, and comments. And the particular topic I will cover have to do with validation practice and with alcohol, my particular stance on alcohol. Before I actually start, I wanted to let you know that I have decided to create a new email address for people to send me comments, questions, or feedback. Unfortunately, I probably won't be able to respond to any or most of the emails that I receive, but it's a private way for people to make comments if they don't want to do it publicly on the forums that where I share these videos. And it remains between you and me. I will, if I find, for example, that there's a lot of comments that are concerned with one particular topic, a lot of questions on the same thing, then I will do more episodes like this where I will have a chance to address those. So I apologize in advance if you don't get a response directly from me. Please be sure that I am reading those emails and that I will attend to them through the podcasts. Here is the email address for you to use if you would like. Let me share that. It's podcasts at fullyhuman.co.uk. Fullyhuman.co.uk is my domain, and I've just created this new email address, podcasts at fullyhuman.co.uk. And it'd be lovely to hear from you with any comments, questions, or feedback that you have. I welcome all feedback, including criticism. It's always helpful. So let me stop sharing that and let me see what I'd like to address first. The first comment I'd like to address had something to do with validation. What happens when we validate in adult company between adults? So what I wanted to say is, first of all, in all relationships, validation is a key for people to feel safe with one another. Nobody feels safe when they're told not to feel something, even with the best of intentions. Nobody's going to feel comfortable if they say, "Oh, don't feel like that," or there's no point in it. So any comments that are dismissive or deflecting or critical or anything other than validation does not actually make us feel safe. Children and young people feel safe with adults who validate their emotions. There's no question about that. Adults also feel safe with adults. No client will ever feel safe with me if I started to tell them that what they're feeling doesn't make sense, or that they felt it for too long, or challenge them inappropriately when they just tell me how they feel or show a feeling. There's no way that they're going to feel safe. So the basis of all relationships must be an attitude of validation and a practice of validation. Now, only when we feel safe with others, we're actually likely to even listen to them and take their comments into account, their feedback into account, listen to a challenge, learn something new. We're not likely to do that if we feel that we're rejected, that what we're feeling, what we're talking about, that we're feeling, that we're experiencing internally is not accepted or seen by the other person. We simply close off and we don't share anymore. Validation leads to a deepening of conversations. It's a very standard thing in therapy. So in Gestalt therapy, when we studied about relationship between clients and therapists, we were always told that if you do not acknowledge somebody else's feelings and you don't let them have their feelings, have their inner experience, basically what you're doing is pulling the rug from underneath them. In any given moment, all we really have is our actual subjective experience. This is at every moment, whatever I'm feeling, this is what I'm feeling in this moment. If you tell me I can't do that, I can't feel that, then I've got nothing left. I've got no reality at that moment. It's incredibly destructive and incredibly unhelpful. So I love some of the lessons we learned in Gestalt therapy, although nobody ever talked about the brain. The principles that we learned were all super accurate. Now, with children, when we validate children's feelings, we directly wire their brain. So when we validate them, we are telling them that we see them. We're telling them that we can have an insight into their inner world, that we acknowledge them. And there is nothing more important for children in particular, for all of us, but particularly for children and young people, than to feel seen and acknowledged. And there's a reason for that. It's because being seen and being acknowledged and validated is key to integrating the two brains that I was talking about, the limbic and the prefrontal, which leads to robust psychology and to proper development towards our potential. So children absolutely need that. In adulthood, that doesn't really happen so simply from the outside. Adults need to do it themselves. So while I can validate my clients, they need to learn to validate themselves. When I validate them, I create the environment and the relationship that makes them feel safe to grow, but the work has to be done by them. So technically, the answer to the comment that I received from a listener, from a viewer, is that with adults, we make people feel safe when we validate them, and we're more likely to have a deeper relationship where things are more disclosed. We're all more likely to listen to each other properly. That happens in relationship therapy all the time. With children, when we validate them, we change their brains directly. It's quite a different process. With adults, if I validate the client's emotions in the moment, the client feels safe with me. But if they don't do anything about their own validation, then they go home with the same brain they came into the session with, session after session after session. They will feel good with me. They will feel safe and calm with me and regulated, but they won't change in any significant way. It's just a simple, basic standard principle about how the adult brain works. Whenever we want to learn something as adults, we know that it is more difficult than what we learned in childhood, which we feel is learned by osmosis. But what we mean by osmosis, so we mean that it's just simply wired from outside directly, and that's what happens also with validation. So I hope this comment is clear enough. If you have any questions, now you have the new email address to write to me to and ask me. And even if I don't do a podcast specifically about questions, I can always weave answers to my questions into existing podcasts and topics that I cover. So write to me to podcasts@fullyhuman.co.uk. So the second topic is kind of interesting. A lot of people think it's a sensitive topic, but I don't think it's a sensitive topic. I never thought it was. And that's the question of alcohol. So I don't know how many of you have know or remember that I said that I make complete abstinence from alcohol a condition for seeing me for therapy. Not all therapists do that, and some people might think this is a bit extreme, but I have very, very good reasons for doing that. I do explain that on my website, but I thought it might be worth explaining here as well. Alcohol is normalized in our society. Everybody thinks it's absolutely fine to drink, that there's absolutely no problem with that. And people who are not alcoholic, who are not dependent on alcohol, think it's absolutely okay and there's nothing wrong with drinking. But I still make it a condition. So let me explain why I do that. So alcohol affects the prefrontal cortex even in very, very small quantities. This is why the law prohibits people from driving, even with very low blood alcohol levels. Pilots can't have any at all. If a pilot's caught with any alcohol in their blood, they basically get the sack. When the prefrontal cortex is compromised, people are less likely to be aware of their surroundings and of themselves. They are less regulated, and they can be prone to making very, very impulsive decisions. So they feel something, get angry with somebody on the road, Like somebody did to me the other day. I was driving perfectly fine in my lane, and somebody didn't like the look of me, and they decided to just cut me in a really aggressive way, and nearly had a car crash because of it. That person was, whatever it was that was going on for them, was angry, clearly did not make a sensible decision when they did that. This could have caused an accident. They could have caused us to be hurt, but also other people on the road, including children. It doesn't really matter. Once you make an impulsive decision with driving, you don't know what the consequences are going to be. So when we have any amount of alcohol in the brain and it compromises our higher functions in the prefrontal cortex, we are not able to regulate ourselves properly. We can't regulate our emotions or our behavior. And so we can make really bad decisions, impulsive decisions. We also lose our empathy and our concern for others. And that's an example, the example I gave about the driver who cut me in this really, really aggressive way. um, he or she wasn't thinking about any consequences, or did not, at that moment, it did not cross their minds to have any concern for me or even for themselves. So empathy goes out the window when the PFC is compromised, the prefrontal cortex is compromised. Also, our response times are slower, and we think and process information much slower, and with more and more alcohol, it becomes more and more impaired. So if you look at all the qualities that I described that the prefrontal cortex enables us, imagine that when you have a bit of alcohol in your system, all of this begins to be compromised. So so that's why not to do it. But there's another thing I wanted to say about that that's really, really important. A lot of people have told me over the years that, oh, they just drink a little bit on the weekend or at the end of the day after they've had a long day and a busy day at the office and they were stressed, and they're drinking just to relax, to chill. But the truth is, people are not actually relaxing. The only thing that actually happens is their awareness of their feeling is weakened. And along with their ability to inhibit or regulate their feelings, they are not aware of them, because the prefrontal cortex is the part of us, part of our brain that makes us aware of what it is that we're feeling. When we think about, when you observe somebody, when you watch somebody who is actually intoxicated, actually drunk, you can see, everybody can see that they're expressing emotions and behaving emotionally in an uninhibited way. Whatever feelings are going to surface depends on what is inside the person's brain and what unfinished business, unintegrated stuff they've got. The point is, though, is that they feel everything, even intensely. They just don't realize it. And that gives them the illusion of relief from difficult feelings, or the freedom to express feelings they normally would inhibit or suppress. I know that there are people who are more affectionate when they drink, or people who are more angry when they drink. Sometimes we used to call it personality change. That people who are normally one way, they have a bit of alcohol in them and suddenly their personality changes. This is a result of lack of inhibition, that the prefrontal cortex no longer regulates them and they just out with it. It can feel really nice and liberating, but it isn't what I would think of as relaxing. It's actually simply the lack of awareness and the lack of inhibition and regulation. When children look into the eyes of an adult, they need to see the prefrontal cortex reflected in the eyes. Now, that's going to sound very strange. How do you see a part of the brain reflected in the eyes? But if you think about the prefrontal cortex as the place where we regulate our consciousness, which is scientifically the case, and the part of our brain that gives us the sense of presence and the ability to attune to others and to be compassionate and to be caring and considered about them. Imagine that that's not there. So we see that through the eyes. When somebody is caring, when somebody really attends to you, you can look in the eyes and you can see that. But when somebody drinks even a little bit, the eyes go. That seems to go, because the prefrontal cortex starts to go to sleep, basically. That disappears from the eyes. Whenever a child looks in the eyes of an adult and they don't see those qualities, they don't see the prefrontal cortex, it's absolutely terrifying. There's no question that seeing a parent or significant adult drunk, completely drunk, is petrifying to a child and confusing. But even in small quantities, it's still a problem for a child. Children need to see that presence of the adult there all the time, whenever they interact with an adult. So I recommend that adults don't drink at all. I mean, why would you want to drink anyway? But adults who have any relationship with children must never drink, especially not around the children. So why do I require people to become abstinent or completely not drink at all? Nothing, not even a glass of wine over dinner once a month, is because therapy is about changing the architecture of the brain in a particular way, and we need the prefrontal cortex to be completely available all the time. Anyone who drinks even a little bit here and there disables or impairs the prefrontal cortex, which means that for that amount of time that they're under the influence of alcohol, even a little bit, they're not present. They are not able to do the integration work. Why would anybody want to slow down their therapy work or their, if you want to call it their developmental work, the growth? I'm an ethical person. I'm not particularly keen on people coming to see me privately, paying a lot of money and not getting the results they need in the minimum amount of time that they can possibly achieve it. There is absolutely no reason to slow this down. Why would anybody want to do that? So because I am ethical and I don't want people just coming to session after session after session and not growing at the pace that seems like is right for them, I'm not comfortable with that. So I just basically say, no, if you want to see me, no alcohol. So far, so good. Of course, the people who do decide to see me are the people who agree to that. I don't know about the people who don't, because maybe they see that on my website and they just decide not to contact me. But I do ask people, please ask yourself if you have resistance to that. What is it that you resist? What part of you, which part of you says I must drink, or I this is ridiculous, or I don't want to not drink at all? What is it? Why is it so important to put toxin into your head? And by the way, this is not a religious or moral position. This is really, really pragmatic. I want my clients to get the results, the effects of therapy, to achieve what they can achieve, which is a great deal, with the minimum amount of time, and not spend years and years and years in therapy unnecessarily. The reason I came up with this rule is because years ago I didn't have it, and I used to just tell people, look, I recommend that you don't drink, but I didn't say it was a condition for seeing me. And I started to notice that there were clients who, given their, my sense of them, my assessment of them, their specs, their brains, I thought they could achieve results really, really well and really fast, and they weren't doing that. It wasn't happening, not as fast as I thought, and not necessarily as well as I thought. And I was puzzled by that. And then when I finally inquired, or by chance, I would suddenly realize that the person was actually drinking regularly. So they would drink half a bottle of wine on a Friday evening, sharing a bottle with their partner over dinner, or going out with friends and drinking some alcoholic beverage. And I thought, oh, well, okay, that's why. So I decided to exclude alcohol from my practice completely. Now, in terms of research is now showing that no amount of alcohol is safe, and that's research from medical science and from neuroscience. There is no amount of alcohol that is safe. Anybody who wants to get any benefit from whatever grapes can give us, and I think the skin of the grapes has something really useful, especially the red grapes. This can be consumed in other forms. There are tablets. You can just eat grapes if you want, but the alcohol has no benefit at all. Um, so, of course, in large quantities, alcohol is implicated in dementia, liver problems, and pancreas problems, potentially cancer, all kinds of stuff like that. So this is not intended to frighten people, and people probably read the same things I'm reading. Um, there is something about there's something about people who have been drinking for very, very long periods of time and who stopped. And so I have come across that through secondhand stories of people who are members of AA. And they've been telling me of people who come to AA and who are definitely clean, who have not been drinking for years. They're totally, totally dry and clean. but they seem to not be changing. They seem to be repeating the same stories over and over again. I actually have met one or two clients like that way back before I knew what I know now. And what I now know and understand is that in large quantities and regular drinking over a long period of time, I think probably impairs the neuroplasticity that we need in order to change the brain. So there's nothing more tragic than somebody who stopped drinking, goes to AA, and really wants to change and grow, but they can't because their brain won't let them. So that's really, really sad. So I really encourage everybody to just don't drink. I know the alcohol industry won't like it. Scotland is where I live, is a big exporter of whiskey. So I apologize to the entire industry, but what you're selling is something that is harmful to people. So I'm not going to hold back about that. Of course, the decision is personal. It's up to each person, but I insist that this is the rule that I have. So no alcohol for my clients. If you're going to do this integrative work and start to validate your feelings so that you begin to change, then I recommend that you consider avoiding alcohol as well. Now, one last thing I wanted to say about that is that some of my clients who basically, well, stop drinking completely, still go out with friends, and they were the people who told me initially that drinking was, they weren't drinking heavily, but it was a social thing, that when you go with a group of people to the pub or somebody's home, it's completely normal that people drink a glass of wine or something together, or a beer or whatever. My clients obviously don't drink, so they said many clients came back with a story that they were out with friends, including young people, including males, not just females, going out with people, regular friends that they see regularly, and they suddenly don't drink. And quietly, before they know it, more and more members of their group stop drinking. They start imitating them. So if my client orders a soft drink or fizzy water or something like that, or the Americans, I think, call it club soda, suddenly other people start to do the same. And there's not a lot of discussion about it. It just kind of happens. So I'm thinking human groups are, well, mostly limbic. And if somebody sets a trend, then others follow. And I also wondered, is it is it a kind of a relief for people to say, well, I don't really want to drink, but I feel like I have to because that's what everybody else does. So if one member of a group it behaves differently, it's like they give permission to others to behave differently too. So it's just interesting. I've heard stories about this from clients. So there is that social aspect of it too, but you can be the trendsetter. You don't have to be a follower of what the group norms are. You need to do what is right for you. So last comment, I'll just repeat that the prefrontal cortex need to be open and available and free from all distractions and all toxins, and definitely free from alcohol, so that it's available to you to validate all of your emotions so that you can integrate as robustly and as quickly as possible. I hope you get something useful out of this recording, and I will see you next time. Please write to me to the new email address. I'll just share it again. If you wanted to make any comments or ask any questions or give me any feedback, podcasts@fullyhuman.co.uk. I look forward to seeing you next time.